What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, we're going to go through all of the seeds that we're starting in late May, early June. Let's go. So when it comes to starting seeds, most of our garden is already started, but there's a lot of things you can actually still be starting if you haven't started your garden yet, or you want a little bit later harvest. We call that succession sowing. Now, succession sowing could be really anything. You could succession sow your zucchinis, beans, or heck, even tomatoes. Anytime you want to have a harvest later on, so not everything comes at once, you can start some stuff earlier and start some stuff later. We're going to be doing a little bit of that, and we also have some stuff that we just haven't put in the garden yet, so we're a little bit late. But we got lots of seeds, and you still got time. Let's go. So these are the seeds that we're going to be succession sowing. Now that means we already have them in the garden, but we're going to plant some more so that at a later time we have another harvest. We have here some Ruby Queen beets. Now we have some over here from our spring planting, but beets are one that we actually will grow 3 different successions of. We grow a spring harvest, a summer harvest, and even a fall harvest. It's a great one we can kind of throw around some of our other beds by our tomatoes or by our peppers because they actually take up relatively very little space. And even if you don't get a beet, you can still eat the beet greens throughout summer. So we got that. We also have some Calabrese broccoli. Now I know what you're thinking. Broccoli, it's like 85 degrees. Luke, you're glistening like you're at a water park and there's like water splashing all over you because it's hotter than the dickens today. How are you planting broccoli? Well, we're planting broccoli because broccoli, believe it or not, can do well in hot weather. It's just that it doesn't like the cold weather transitioning to the hot weather. So give yourself just a shot at planting a little bit of broccoli. You might find it does fairly well in your area. If not, if it doesn't do well for us, we'll throw it in our fall garden, and it always does pretty well for us in the fall. Next is Black Beauty zucchini. Behind you guys, I have all of our zucchini planted out already, but when zucchini starts growing, it grows really fast, it produces really fast, and sometimes, depending on the season, it can be done really fast. So I always like to have a backup in case we end up getting things like squash bugs or powdery mildew. I like to have some extra plants thrown in, so we're gonna throw those in. Still plenty of time to grow those. I also have some lettuce here. Now, crisp mint lettuce is one of the ones that you can actually grow later in the season. As long as you sow it early, you keep it protected with lots of water, keep it nice and cool, maybe even use some shade cloth, it's gonna do great. Also, we have here some Danish ballhead cabbage. That's more of a late season cabbage. It does very well in the summer. And we also have some Royal Châtenay carrots. You wanna make sure that if you're planting carrots, you do not sow them later, in Michigan at least, than July. Carrots will not germinate if it gets hot and dry, so we still need to sow them when the nights are still somewhat cool. And we're also gonna cover them with some cardboard. And that way the cardboard will actually protect the seeds, keep them even more cool and dark, as well as moist, so they can germinate. Up next are some plants for our cattle panel trellis. Now I love these. It's a great way to grow vertically rather than out horizontally. And so we're gonna throw some pole beans. We got some Oriental yard long pole beans. They do so well and they drape down, they look awesome. And we also have some small personal melons. We're actually gonna grow up this side some small personal melons. We got some Kazakh melons and some Ha Ogan melons, and I love growing them. They're so delicious and they're personal size, meaning they're not gonna get really large. So you can actually grow them on a trellis like this. They can sometimes hang just free hanging, but a lot of times what we'll do is we'll tie up just some old nylons in kind of a hammock to support their weight, and they do wonderfully. So give it a shot, grow yourself some melons. It's not too late to grow them. Up next, we're gonna intercrop around our tomatoes. Now you know I'm a huge advocate of intercropping. We're actually gonna plant some basil around our tomatoes. It's great for not only pest reduction with tomato hornworms, but it also is gonna allow us to grow more food in less space. So try yourself some intercropping, grow yourself some basil, you got lots of time. Also things like parsley, you still have time for that as well. A lot of herbs you still have time in your growing season for. Next, we're not gonna plant these right now, right here, because we don't really have any more space in our garden, but you actually could and should, if you wanna grow asparagus from seed, you absolutely should get your hands on some seeds and start them now, because they're a perennial, meaning the earlier you can start them, the more established they're gonna be, and the more chance they are of gonna be surviving the winter. So make sure you get yourself some asparagus started now. You won't be harvesting it for 1 to 2 more years, but it'll give you a chance to get it established so it survives. Up next is corn. Now, any type of corn, you want to get started when the soil is warm. It's a big mistake to plant out corn too early. Same thing with your beans. Beans and corn are very prone to rot because there's a lot of soil bacteria and fungi that will end up rotting out the seeds. And so what you want to do is wait for the soil temperatures to reach about 45 to 50 degrees. At that point, it's a great time to plant your corn. Now, our soil is about 55 to 60 degrees, which is awesome, but we're gonna plant out a few rows of corn over at our friend's house because sweet corn is kind of one of our favorites, but we don't have a whole lot of room here, especially now that we've gotten most of the garden planted out. And so because we still want corn, we're gonna swap, we're actually gonna barter. We're growing them some tomatoes and they're allowing us to grow some corn, which is great. All right, up next are some flowers. Now what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna grow a combination of nasturtiums and sunflowers. We have here the mammoth sunflower and some, this is just a jewel mix nasturtium. We're gonna put some of our nasturtiums here. We're gonna plant a few sunflowers here and then nasturtiums around the base, because nasturtiums, believe it or not, are not affected by the roots of sunflowers. Sunflowers actually will interact a lot of times with some crops that you're growing and can actually inhibit the growth of them. It's a big mistake that gardeners will do, is planting them too close. But the great thing with nasturtiums is they're not affected. And so we're actually gonna intercrop for just a little bit of beauty in this end of the bed, kind of help find some pollinators, bring them into the area, maybe help with our overall production. And because you can eat the sunflowers, it's an extra snack as well. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually prep this soil here with a small little furrow to put in some cucumber seeds, because that's another thing we're gonna be starting. Now cucumbers are one that I highly recommend sowing multiple successions of. Don't plant just one and done, because a lot of times cucumbers can be very susceptible to disease, but also the cucumber beetle. And so make sure that you sow probably 2 or 3 successions of cucumbers throughout the season for maximum success. I would highly recommend it. Obviously, this is just my advice. You don't have to follow that advice, but you're gonna find that probably 1 of 3 of those crops will get some type of pest, and this will really help to ensure better results. We're also gonna be planting some bunching onions. Now, I love bunching onions because you can sow them any time of year, in the spring, in the summer, the fall, even into winter. They're such a versatile crop, and because they're a bulb, they're gonna perennialize and they're gonna grow in the garden so that you can actually harvest them next year as well. So grow yourself some bunching onions. I actually prefer them over some of our bulbing onions, because if you haven't started your bulbing onions yet, you don't have enough time. That's because bulbing onions are daylight specific, and when the days start to get shorter, the bulbs will start to form. So we're already kind of halfway into the summer months, if you will. And so at the peak season is when you should have an onion that's fully growing, not just getting started. And so it's a little bit too late to start bulbing onions, but bunching onions are fair game. And last but not least are our greens. Now, I love growing greens throughout summer, but a lot of people end up getting challenged because of the fact that there's not a lot of greens that like hot weather. So yeah, you've got your perennial, your red vein sorrel. That's awesome. You could grow that. There's still time for that. But one of my favorites, well, 3 of my favorites, that's why I saved them for the last, are black magic kale or lacinato kale. Those are all great. They're gonna survive spring all the way to winter. Then we have some rainbow Swiss chard, one of our all-time favorites. It never gets bitter. It doesn't really go to seed. It's just so hardy. It does well, like kale does, spring all the way to winter. And then finally is a hot weather spinach known as Malabar spinach. Now, it's not a true spinach, but it's actually a vining spinach. And we're gonna give it some support. We're gonna make like a little A-frame trellis. Stay tuned for later episodes. Basically right out here, we're gonna have an A-frame trellis and we're gonna grow some red Malabar spinach. And the great thing about this is the fact that this is actually a tropical plant. So it needs nice, warm, hot weather. So it's gonna thrive in this early June weather that we're having, well through summer into even early fall. So that's a great way to grow tons of greens that you otherwise wouldn't really have the weather to grow. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all will start some of these seeds in your garden. There's still lots of time. We still have seeds yet to plant. There's still so much time left in our season. So if you feel like you're too late, go head over to MIgardener.com, get yourself some seeds, pop them in the ground, and I guarantee you, you'll not be too late. It's not too late to start a garden. So I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you all to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider checking this one out. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you so much for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. If you haven't subscribed yet, it's free. Consider doing that. We upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, rain or shine. And if you need any garden tools, supplies, or seeds, check out MIgardener.com. We got you covered. See you guys in the garden. Bye.